thank you for taking the time. Aside from doing media, good day for you so far?
Yes, we got a few different things going on here at the house, a couple of repair things, but otherwise all is well.
Something I'm very intrigued about in terms of talking shop. What's your home recording studio setup like? For example, do you have a setup as a voice actor for decades like a rock band would?
No, I came to the home studio setup with the pandemic, and thank God for my son because he's a musician and very familiar with all the bells and whistles of studios, and he basically set us up first in the house that we had at the very beginning of the pandemic, and then when we moved into this house, we closed escrow the 2 days before lockdown. Yeah. We thought we were screwed. What have we done? But it actually ended up being a very good move. So here we have a dedicated room. We actually took out the smallest bedroom and just pulled the closet out of it and converted it into a dedicated studio for both him and me, him for his singing and me for my voice work. And then about 2 months ago, we noticed water dripping from the foam on the ceiling, and yeah, we had a leak. So right now we're in the process of repairing that. So I'm back up in the closet of his bedroom. I just literally ran down from doing a scratch track for a movie trailer to start talking to you. But yeah, I'm surrounded by sweaters and hoodies and shoes again.
I didn't know that when somebody looks at your IMDb, it is longer than just about anybody's, but I didn't realize that you also did movie trailer voiceovers.
I have done, yes. It's not my bread and butter like some friends of mine, like Andy Geller, but it is something I've gotten to do a few of, and very happy when I do it.
Before I ask you about the movie that we were set up to talk about, Murder Anyone, were you brought into the movie trailer world like, say, Pablo Francisco, where they said, do the Don LaFontaine voice?
I was more, no, it was actually do the Alec Baldwin voice. My first movie trailer, they gave me the trailer for the Royal Tenenbaums to listen to. Those are the days before they could just send you a YouTube link.
Right.
And, it was like, they were 4 extraordinary children in the Tenenbaum family. Chad Tenenbaum was it was that. And I just kind of stuck with it, and it ended up getting me cast as Alec Baldwin in Team America. Or Eric Brauren, as he's called in the film. No relation to Alec Baldwin. It's purely mental. This is Eric Brauren.
Yeah.
I've got a bit of a natural rasp in my voice, and Alec and I, although we've never met, we were born 4 days apart, so I'm exactly the right age. And so I kind of kept some of that, just employing that gravel when I do a movie trailer. It's served me well.
Absolutely. And that's not the only Long Islander that I'm going to bring up in this conversation, but Murder Anyone is your latest film where we actually see you on camera. When did you actually film it?
We're coming up on like a year that we began filming it in mid-February or late February of last year. And I've actually lost about 35 pounds since the filming of totally intentionally. Just got a little bit of a wake-up call with borderline diabetes. And so I reined in, the cakes and pies and breads and a lot of broiled chicken and steamed vegetables. But not be it as it may, I'm not a leading man. I'm out of the leading bad category, by a long shot now. So I'm a character actor, and I'm playing a writer, and it makes sense that he might have a couple of pounds on him and all of that. There, it's a bit of a challenge for me to watch because of the changes I've made in my body with exercise and diet. But I'm going, that's George. George is, and I'm by no means svelte. But I'm working on it. It's coming down. The gut's coming down. But that said, I was brought into it because the writer of the original play was one of my best friends, Gordon Greshak, who I met while we were doing the OG Animaniacs and Pinky and the Brain back in the 90s. And he was good enough to then cast me in, I think, the most underrated cartoon show of the 90s,
Mhm.
Captain Simian and the Space Monkeys, which wasn't just a good cartoon, it was good science fiction. We had some, sci-fi legends writing scripts, including DC Fontana, Dorothy Fontana. So we were, I got to be very good friends with Gordon on that, and we remained fast friends until his death. And I went to the opening night of Murder Anyone, or sorry, if you say it like that, it just sounds like the world's most indiscriminate serial killer. Yeah, Murder Anyone.
Yeah.
Murder Anyone. So
that was your John Lovitz take on it from
yes, Murder Anyone. I don't actually say that title in the film, although I do say
right.
Murder Trap, and I bring a bit of a Lovitzy thing that, although Gordon had a kind of a Lovitzy lilt to the way he spoke. He would say the word hello. He would always say hello, like that. Just his way of greeting you. Anyway, I saw the opening night of Murder Anyone when it was at the White Fire Theater here in Los Angeles, which I live just down the street from, and it was a funny play, but I think, and not to take away from any future theatrical performances of it, but it works really well as a movie because the transitions can be instantaneous. And so you had actors jumping behind couches to disappear while the scene went back to the two writers arguing about what the play / screenplay should be. And in film, you can just do that with an edit. And to the point that I met Galadriel when she came to the set, but and Christos as well. But they were to begin their sequences just as Charlie and I were wrapping up ours. So it was like just me there for seconds, and then I didn't see them again until screenings. But those things took place in a different part of this mansion that we shot in, and it was just great fun. So,
and it's great to see that James is carrying on the tradition of his father by directing this.
Absolutely. I mean, James was determined, and it was a holy mission to him to bring his father's plays to life. Gordon has two more plays that I understand that James is prepping for film eventually. In between, of course, the projects he's already got going. I mean, he's really starting to do some high mid-level budget. No, it's still under 100 million. But high budget, high mid-level budget films. It's amazing that's that category now.
Right.
Like a category called 50 million. It's like 50 million and under is like high mid budget. So he did Bruce Willis's latest two films and Mel Gibson's films. But he did 30 films before he was 30 years old. I know because I went to his 30th birthday party, and that was 2 weeks before lockdown, because he's a February 29th baby. So really, actually, it was his 5th birthday.
Leap year joke. I get it. My birthday's March 1st, so I'm ready with the leap year humor.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So he's you have to wait an extra day to celebrate your birthday before.
Exactly.
He just did a volume of work that was unbelievable, and he'll be the first one to tell you some of it was schlock, but it didn't matter. More time behind the camera, the 10,000-hour rule.
Yeah.
So he runs a fantastic set. I mean, I've done, obviously 99% of how I've buttered my bread has been voiceover throughout the years, but I've been on a few film sets, and James runs a set that is so much fun. And yet, it's the deadly earnest work of making a film on the director's money, by the way. This is a film he financed himself. So you can't F around too much. But he made sure that the mood was always upbeat. We had a lot of set inside jokes that we do, and including talking like Louis B. Mayer. Everything was wild, cheese and crackers. Louis B. Mayer would love that tape, and he loved that stuff. But he's a very efficient director as well, and he knows what he wants. So we had a great time, and he was very patient with this guy right here.
I'm sure you're selling yourself short.
The novice, the guy only does on camera like once every 4 years. Although in the last few years, I just made a determination that I would say yes to anything and everything that any friend of mine asked me to do. So I've done a couple of student films, short films. I did one for Lee Aronson. We did a 10-minute short. Lee Aronson, who co-created 2.5 Men and Big Bang. He directed me in a short film he wrote. And I had an award-winning Xbox commercial about 3 years ago for a game called Forza Horizon 4. I played a pompous British announcer, and that was fun. And so I'm getting used to seeing myself on camera, and I try to totally lose the idea that I'm on a camera. I just, for me, it's as the great director Ron Clark once said when we were making my very first on-camera film, Funny Farm, in 1980, he said, "Just pretend it's really happening." And that stayed with me all this time.
Wow. But
Yeah.
you mentioned before, hey, 99% of it, your bread and butter has been voiceover, but hey, your stand-up comic days, and I know about the Young Comedian special.
Oh my gosh, yes.
So when I said that's not the only Long Islander that I want to reference, Rodney Dangerfield was from Long Island.
Hey, from Babylon, Long Island. Okay, yeah.
Okay, you knew that right away
absolutely.
like that.
I toured with Rodney for 1.5 years. So I heard all the stories backstage and afterwards. Even a couple of times I stayed at his house in between gigs. He had a beautiful home in Greenwich, Connecticut. And it was, he'd put me up there. So we'd take the tour bus down to Schenectady, do the job, come back to the house. I'd stay in one of the many bedrooms in the house, and then go down. And then we'd do Poughkeepsie, New York, and it was Scranton. It would just be, one of those things. So I got to know Rodney fairly well.
Was that in the Rappin' Rodney era?
It was right after Rappin' Rodney. It was during his meteoric rise at 62 years old.
Yeah, that's one of the best ones ever. That's the opposite of, say, Justin Bieber, where 13 and made it, whereas Dangerfield, easy money, he was already in his 60s, I believe.
Yep. And he, Caddyshack really broke him as a film star, but broke through. And up to that, he'd just been a very successful working comedian. Certainly, he would never cry poor, but he hit actual superstardom in his early 60s, where he was a household name and a most recognizable face. Prior to that, I think most people would just have said, the guy doesn't get no respect. Some people couldn't remember his name. They just say, the guy doesn't get any respect. He's on Ed Sullivan all the time.
Right. Jack Roy, I think, was the name.
His real name was that was his first performing name, Jack Roy. And because he was Jacob, I think he was Jacob Roy Cohen.
Yeah.
He was born Jacob Roy Cohen. So he changed the name to Jack Roy. Then he quit the business and he became a aluminum siding salesman with his best friend, Joe Ansis. And
I didn't realize that. They always said that he was the funniest guy in the room that wasn't a comic. I didn't realize that he came from that.
Exactly. Joe Ansis was that civilian that just hung out with comedians. And they say Lenny Bruce kind of took his attitude. Joe was a very hip guy. I remember he talked like a hipster. And I was there the day that he said, and it's in the book, Rodney put it in his book. I was there the day that I was at Rodney's apartment, which was a totally different setup than the Connecticut house. It looked like a bachelor's apartment. And he had a dog, he had a little poodle named Kino. And Kino, he'd sometimes keep Kino on a leash in the apartment just so that he wouldn't, mess in the living room. And so Kino was on a leash and they're sitting there talking and Joe's there and he goes, "Hey, what's the dog looking at me for?" "No, I do. Every room I go, the dog's staring at me." And Joe, without listening to me, goes, "Man, you're a star."
Yeah. It's because he's famous, right?
Famous. I was there the day Joe said that in 1985.
Wow.
Yeah.
My mind's blown on all that, because if most people did the Young Comedian special, they would just, the rest of their career, that would be the thing that they'd have in the parentheses next to their name. But for you, it's a barely known footnote.
Well, I switched gears shortly thereafter,
Right.
and just the whole voiceover thing took over. And it's in my IMDb, and I do not want to dwell on it or belabor it because we're here to talk about. Although it is about fathers, I will say that,
Yeah.
and losing them. My father, as you might know, was murdered
Yes.
in Toronto in 1987, and I really never did stand-up comedy again because a lot of the reason that I did it was because it was the one thing I'd done that made him proud. Because I wasn't an athletic kid, so he was a little embarrassed by how cloddy I was, and then my brother Paul was a natural athlete, so I always felt my father, was not as behind me as could be. But when this happened for me, the stand-up comedy, and he got to toast me with champagne in the Caesars dressing room, which is Frank Sinatra's dressing room.
Yeah.
When Frank was alive, he took the opening act dressing room and gave his openers the main dressing room because he loved that dressing room because that was the star dressing room when he first started playing Caesars. Then they made this huge renovation. He went, "No, I'm not interested. I like that one." So his openers had this gigantic 2-level thing, and he just liked the dressing room off the stage. And so when my dad knew that he was in Frank's dressing room, that was a big deal to him. And when I knew that I would never see him again in the audience and I would never have him come backstage, I just was I just lost I lost that fire.
I
But
can only imagine.
yeah,
That's not the
not to
only
mention going down
tragedy.
the rabbit hole of alcoholism and drug addiction, which I'm happy to say I just celebrated 34 years of continuous
Wow.
sobriety. But it was, voiceover was always there for me. Even I was always able to do it, even with, the grief and the dysfunction of the chemical dependency. But I was always able to pull it off, and certainly not as well as I hope I do today. I listened to old things I did, and I can kind of tell. I can tell how revved up I am on certain substances in certain episodes of things. But I won't send you screaming to Tubi to look them up.
Yeah.
But that said, I'm very grateful that voiceovers has been so good to me because it's had a longevity that I don't know if I had an on-camera career that I would have. You kind of, unless you're, you've made a fantastic ownership deal on your show, like Jerry Seinfeld or my friend Ray Romano,
Yeah.
where the show literally takes care of you for the rest of you're flying private jets the rest of your life.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. They don't really give out those deals anymore. But the average working actor, even if you get to play number 2 on a sitcom, you need to work again. You have to go back to work at some point, and sometimes that work can be hard to find because you're so identified with your character from, as Rob Paulson likes to give the generic name of Who's Cooking the Soup. That's his name of just the ultimate sitcom. It can be a thing, but I've managed to not be out of work except for one 6-month spate in 2009. I've managed to not be out of work since 1985.
That was actually the next thing I was going to ask you, because IMDb's timeline can be very deceiving, or it doesn't have these commercials you did, or you filmed this and then it came out 4 years later. I was curious if there was ever a period where you didn't work, but you're saying 6 months or so, 2009, and that was it.
Yeah, 2009. I remember because it was so remarkable that here I am, and it's 2009, and then I get the voice of Lexus. I went from not working for 6 months to being the voice of Lexus. They drove a car up to my house and said, "Here, this is yours. Drive this," and they gave me a nice check in front. And when they did that for me for 7 years, and I'm very grateful for it. I mean, how can you complain? I mean, with that said, I wish I was still the voice of Lexus. Certainly, John Hamm got to keep his job, and Chris Pine got to keep his job, but it's okay. I had a great run. And
For
the last time I
every
worked was 2016, the 2016 Lexus GS. Once driven, there's no going back.
I didn't know that was you.
That
That's
was me.
incredible.
Obama and I had the same last day at work, which was January 19th.
You have had a much better commercial voiceover career than Gilbert Gottfried, who who had his one, and that was it. But
Gilbert. Yeah, no, but he was certainly identifiable as that character.
absolutely,
That was the beginning of the cancelings, I guess cancel culture started with Gilbert. I remember they came to me and said, "How's your Gilbert Gottfried?" I said, "It's probably pretty good, but I'm not reading for it."
so you were on the short list of that. Oh,
Yeah.
wow. I've
Yeah.
heard rumors of that.
I've pissed off a lot of agents with my refusal to step into the roles of my more famous friends. I had the chance to walk into the Red M&M, just become it, because they'd seen me on Entertainment Tonight doing John Lovitz as they were covering a story on the Critic, and John wasn't there, so they covered me, and I did my Lovitz, and they went okay, and said John Lovitz was the original Red M&M. Now there's no M&Ms. That's it. We're done with the cartoon characters. But they said you can just record tomorrow, and I said no. I have to check with John first. I want to make sure this isn't something he doesn't still want to do, because they told me, yeah, he's walking away from it. I went, really? So I called him up and I said, John, are you walking away from the Red M&M? He goes, no, I'm not. I'm in negotiations right now, Maurice. I said, okay, well, you should know that they just tried to give it to me, and I'm going to refuse it. Oh, thanks, Maurice. You're a real good friend. And that was it. But when it came time where they said, all right, we won't use a sound alike, they wouldn't let me read for it. When they said you can do your own thing with it, my agent was free to read any of her clients except me, because I wouldn't play with them. So, but I won't do it. I refused the first Simpsons recasting, the season, I think it was the season 6 recasting. I said, no, I won't read for any of their parts.
But still, you did a couple of dozen episodes of
this. Because they were resentful. They understood. And those, and Dan and Harry and Hank and Julia and Julie and Yardley and Nancy got the money they deserved because other actors didn't come in and undercut them. Not any that were any good. So yeah, but no, Al and Mike, and Al now runs the show, bring me in every time Orson Welles appears in the show, and I think they sometimes write Orson Welles into the Critic, thank goodness, so that their old pal from the Critic writes it into the Simpsons, so their old pal from the Critic gets to keep the lights on at home. I love doing the Simpsons. It's just,
I can imagine.
Yeah,
well, you've been so generous with that. The last thing I want to know is, where do we look for the latest and the greatest from you? Is there a definitive place that you go, please check this, as opposed to IMDb, to know where you're appearing, so we could see you in Murder Anyone and your next on-screen thing? Well,
I'm not as, I need to be more on top of that, because you can follow me on Twitter at Maurice LaMarche, MauriceLamarche, LaMarche, all one word, or Instagram, where there's an underscore between Maurice and LaMarche. But I need to be more on top of that, although it will be plugging the heck out of Murder Anyone this week, because I'm really proud of it. I'm proud to be associated. It's a love letter from a son to a departed father, and the fact that I get to play a version of Gordon in the movie is just, it's an honor for me. Charlie, the other writer in the film, is played by Gordon's real life partner Charlie, who is when Pinky and the Brain ended, a friend of mine said, well, I'm taking Meisner classes, and there's a guy in my class who says he knows you, Charlie Howell. I called Charlie. I said, you're acting now? He goes, yeah, I want to expand my horizons. And he went full Meisner, and he's the most amazing scene partner. I mean, our scenes together are so much fun. He's such a good actor. So so I will be definitely plugging Murder Anyone all week long, and it'll be on all the streamers on February 7th. Glad to hear that. Thank you for the many, many years of great entertainment. Really looking forward to whatever's next from you, whether you're on screen, off screen, or just the voice of Lexus or whatever it is. Oh, well, that won't be coming back to me, unfortunately. But thank you. And thank you for sticking with me all these years as Paleo knows, it always knows, the Kellogg's Fruit Loop cereal. And I'm not that one anymore either. They finally went young with the character and made him into a kid version of Toucan Sam. But you can't ever complain about 35 years. The lesson here is every job comes to an end. So exactly. Yes. Including this interview. So thank you again, and have a wonderful rest of the day, Maurice. Take care. All right, Darren. Thank you very much.
Paltrocast.